Today we're going to show you how to use the Addi Express king size knitting machine to make a hat in about a half an hour or less. You're going to be learning how to cast on, how to switch colors, how to knit in the round, and how to bind off in the end. The Addi Express king size is the larger of the two round circular knitting machines that are produced by Addi. You have, I believe, 46 needles on your bed, of which 3 of them, and if you notice as I turn the handle and you go around, you'll notice 3 of them are black. Now, right now when I'm turning my handle, I'm continuously going in a circle. That is because I have my switch on the side here down on Rundstricken or circular knitting. If the little red switch is up, that would be considered plain knitting, as they call it, which is basically knitting a panel, so you're going to be knitting back and forth. But that's another lesson, and we're not going to learn that one today. So I'm going to put it right back to circular, and we're going to go to the 3 black needles, because this is where we're going to start our cast on. You always want to make sure when you're turning the handle that this little door that holds the yarn in place is closed in this position. So if it's open, your needles will start hitting it here, and not only will you damage your needles possibly, but you can also damage this little piece and break it. So always make sure your little door is closed when you're casting on. We are using a worsted weight yarn today. This is actually called Nimbus. It's 100% organic, and it's from Zentrum. So you start by leaving a portion in the middle that is going to be long enough for you to actually finish off the hat later on. And in this case, I guess that's probably about 24 inches. We're going to leave that in the middle of the piece, and then we're going to start with the first black needle, all right, facing me. And when I say the first black needle, I mean the other 2 black needles should be on your left-hand side. Take your yarn and you're going to loop it in front of that black needle. Then you're going to turn your handle slightly, and you're going to have that yarn go in the back of the needle. Now notice I put that 24 inches in the center, and you just want to leave it hanging in the center as you go behind and then in front of that black needle, behind the next needle, in front, behind, in front. And you just want to continue. I'm slowly turning the handle. I don't want to do it too fast because I don't want to miss it. Oops, got to get some more yarn here. I'm actually going to take my yarn and put it on the floor. I'm pulling it out of the middle as I do this. So front, back, front, back, front, back. And just continue all the way around. Now, you don't want to make this too tight, but you don't want to make it too loose. So it's just a matter of not pulling it as you do it, just sort of let the machine determine how tight it's going to be. Now, when you come to the next black needle, your yarn should be due to go in front. And if it's not, you need to check. That means that you probably made an error somewhere and either went in the back twice or went in the front twice. So when you come to the black needle, as long as you've got your yarn in the front, you're actually set to go. You're going to take the yarn, put it in the front. You're going to open your little carriage that holds the yarn. You're going to put your yarn in it and pull it down through this little hole. Pull it nice and taut. Close the little door, and then you're going to start turning your handle away from you. Now, your first round, if the yarn is a little bit tight, it might get, do you hear that? It's a little bit sticky as it goes along. But then once I have my first row done, it goes very smoothly. Now, all you need to do from here on out is actually turn the handle and turn it away from you. I have my hand here. I'm holding the yarn. It helps me control a little bit where it's going, or I can feel actually if it's not coming out of the ball at the right tension, because then I can stop turning and I could get rid of the extra tension that's there, and then I could continue again. You want to try to keep the tension as even as possible. You can also see here there's a little counter, and the counter actually shows you how many rounds you've done. Now, I didn't start at 0, I actually started at 2, but you can hit it clear at any point. It takes you back to 0. Every once in a while, that counter goes on the fritz. It starts blinking, and usually that is because you have a high acrylic content in your fiber. If you have a high acrylic content or high nylon content, what happens is it sends some kind of a little electrical spark, and it will interfere with your counter. So it's not necessarily that your counter is broken, it's just that you're using a really high acrylic content. Now for this hat, we're not actually keeping track of how many rows we do. I happen to know that for this hat, if I use a full ball of Nimbus in a solid color and a full ball in a multicolor, I will end up with exactly the right size for the hat that I am making. But you notice how easy it was to actually cast on, and now I am just going in a circle. It's pretty mindless, pretty thoughtless, and I'm just going to continue doing this rather than sitting here and talking to you the whole time. We are going to actually do it in fast motion. We'll make it go super duper fast, and we'll put down the amount of time lapse. Coming to the end. And I've got about 6 inches left. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull those 6 inches into the middle of the machine. Notice how it's hooked on this needle here, this white one right here. So I'm going to put it in the middle, and I'm going to grab my new yarn. This is also the same yarn. It's Nimbus, and it is a striped version. So I'm going to put, once more, about 6 inches in there, and I'm going to put my yarn into the little carriage. I'm going to make sure that it's nice and closed, and then I'm going to put it in here. When I start turning, I want to make sure that one needle is catching one yarn and that the next needle is catching the new yarn. This way, I know I'm not going to have a hole. Once I see that they've been caught, and they've been knitted, and they have, I'm actually going to take the two, and I'm going to tie a knot underneath this little red lump, hump, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to tie a knot right under there, and I'm just going to let these hang down. And in the end, because this hat is a reversible hat and these are hanging in the middle, you won't see these whatsoever. You can cut them down later if you want. It's totally up to you. And now I'm going to start knitting again. So you can see how easy it was for me to change a color. Now this one's coming out of the middle a little bit tighter, causing a little bit more tension, so I'm going to pull some of it out so that it runs a little bit smoother. And once more, I'm holding it in my hand so you can see this way I'm eliminating any knots that might happen. So once more, we're going to fast forward till we get to the end of the hat. As I go along, you notice that the hat is gathering in here. There's two things you can do. You can just leave it sitting on the counter there because this is not going to be a super long piece. But if you're knitting a scarf or something, you could pull it off to the side. And then as you knit it, every once in a while you just turn it around. Or if you know that your yarn is running smoothly, you just hold the bottom in your left hand and you turn it as you go along. And you just keep an eye on your yarn to make sure that there's no knots and that the tension is running smoothly. And you can see how well that works too. And that way it's always out of your way. If you're doing a really long scarf, you just take the end of the scarf, you fold it in half, and you rubber band it as you turn it. And that way it'll stay out of your way. Okay, so now I've got a little bit more than a yard left. And I'm going to bind off my hat. So the first thing I'm going to do is take the end of the yarn, and if you notice, when you get your machine, you actually get this nice little plastic needle that comes with it. Now you don't absolutely have to have this plastic needle to bind off. You can actually use a regular tapestry needle, and if you get one that has a little bend in it, it helps. But the plastic is a little bit more flexible, and so I would take every precaution you can, to keep that plastic needle and use it when you can. I'm going to run my yarn through the needle, and now what I need to do is take off the stitches from the actual piece. Now if you notice over here, if I would try to take it off, it won't really come off because the stitch is actually it's being held down by the needle inside of there. So what I need to do is I need to take stitches that are being held but are not being held down. So if you notice here, if I hold this towards the center and I turn my needle still in the clockwise direction, when this needle comes down, this stitch here will be able to pop off very easily. So I'm going to take one stitch off and I'm going to run my yarn through it so I know it's going to hold in place. And I'm going to pull this under here, and then I'm going to do the next one. Now you don't have to do each one, oops, this got stuck over here, individually. You do want to make sure that you are keeping all your stitches that are here in place and that as you turn, you're not losing any. So if you do a couple as you start in the beginning, you can just go like this. And the thing to watch out for is that these aren't popping off so that you lose them. You really do want to turn as you go along. And once you, oops, now we're going to pull this up a little bit so it's just a single thread that's in there. And once you've gotten about halfway, you can actually, now did you notice that made a sound? I did the big no-no, I left that open. Once you get to a certain point, and note you can just do more stitches at once. Notice how I always hold down the stitch while I'm pulling it through. So like this one, I'm going to hold this down just to make sure that I don't lose it. This one's not going to pop out because the actual yarn is being held in still by the needle. And I'm just going to run this through. Almost there. At the end, make sure that you're getting it. There we go. And I have my piece. So, to finish the hat, because we now have a long piece, I'm actually going to move the machine so that we can, so I won't get it stuck on there. The machine is held in place by these two little, what are these called? Clamps. Just take the little clamps off and move the machine. And for those of you who are wondering, yes, you can take the machine and hold it in your lap if you want. It's not quite as easy to do, but you can do it. So the hat is going to be shaped by turning it inside out. We have two sections here. We have a striped section and we have a solid section, as you can see. And the way the machine binds or casts on and binds off, it's basically just one strand of the yarn that's run through the stitch, which means that you can pull it tight and you can also pull it out loose. Now what you do want to keep in mind is if you're using a yarn that is like this one here is actually very easy to pull. Well, maybe it's not so easy to pull apart. Sorry about that. If it's easy to pull apart, be careful when you pull. You don't want it to pull and then lose all your stitches. You want to be careful with that. So I'm going to turn my piece inside out like this. I'm going to have the dark side on the inside for the time being. And I'm going to keep the stripes where they're at. I'm going to pull all my, oops, I'm missing, there's one, here we go. Pull all my ends out this way. And then we're going to have a little floret at the top of our hat. So what I have here is I'm going to pull this in just a little bit so that it curls. There we go. And then I'm going to use my, actually I'm going to use a metal needle at this point. It'll be a little bit easier. I'm going to actually take this and I'm going to stab it all the way through. Actually, do I have this pretty even? And I do. I'm going to stab it all the way through the piece. And then when it's double, I'm actually going to take it and wrap it around my hat. Oops. Making sure that I stay out of the way of the other blue one. And then I'm going to stab it through again. And again. Oops. One more time. Oops. Now it looks like I actually have an extra piece hanging out here, which I'll hide later. Do we have scissors? Okay, I have no scissors handy, so I'm just going to leave that hanging for a minute. And then there's this one. And then this one I'm actually going to take, I'm going to cut this a little bit shorter. We've got a little too much yarn there. And we do want this one, we're going to pull it in a little bit and then we're going to curl it outwards. Yep, all the way out so we have a little bit of a blossom there. Just making ourselves a cute little blossom pom-pom. Sort of turn it inside, just like that. And then when you have it how you want it, nice and even, once more, you're going to take this yarn and you're going to start just jabbing it through a few times like this. Okay. Oh, now I've got it stuck on that. Don't want that. Then I'm going to pull it through to the other side. Like this. And I'm actually going to make sure I get right through the middle. There we go. And very simply, I'll just run a few, oops, so you can't see it, run a few knots way down inside there. Now. And so I know I don't run into any problems. I'm actually not going to cut it real close to the end. I'm actually going to take it and run it through just the one layer, not both layers. And then I'll pull it a little tight, let go, and then that thread is hidden. So there's one. And on this side, we want to finish off this one as well. So this one gets hooked on the side there, and then what you can also do to make it look a little more consistent, oops, is, where are we here? Once we go through, is hook up another side up here on the other edge so that you just have a little bit of a consistent look to it. Then we'll take it through to this side, pop this through, yep. Pop it through this side. Yep, we already have one there. Oh, I think we're actually pretty good. And then we're going to take this, just like we did the other one. I'm going to pull it through the middle. And try to do a couple little slip knots right deep down inside. Then we'll take it and we will do it like we did the other one. Just pull it through just one layer. Give it a snip. It pops right back in. Yep, and we had one loose string here. Let's get rid of that. And the way we're going to get rid of that is simply by pulling it once more through one layer. That seems to work quite well. Fold this over, and you have yourself a cute little hat. So with a little pom-pom on top. And if you want to, you can wear it this way, a little bit. The only thing is you have a little poof there, so if you wanted to have it, you know, so you don't have the little poof if you're wearing it the other way around, you can actually put a little pom-pom on here if you want to. It actually gives you a nice fullness on the top. And there you go, in less than a half an hour. Voila. You have a hat. All right. Okay, another option for finishing the hat would be to make a simple reversible hat without any kind of a floret or pom-pom. Once more, you want to take your piece, oops, and you want to turn it so that it is inside out, like this. And then you want to start with one end, and in this case, I think we will start with this one because it is on the inside, oops. And you can just pull your yarn. Now, like I mentioned before, be careful if you have a yarn that breaks easily. It's better to have it double through there because that way you know you won't tear a hole in it. But pull it quite tight so that the hole is totally filled in. And then this here is actually a little too long, so I'm going to cut it off a bit. Take your tapestry needle and get it threaded. And then you just want to sort of, from the wrong side, take this and get it nice and tight together. Just sort of pull these stitches in. And you really can't go wrong as long as you stick to that top row or two. And just do quite a few of these. And then top it off once more with some slip stitches. And because it's going to be stuck in the hood, you can actually leave a little bit of, in the hood, I'm sorry, in the top of the hat, you can actually leave the strands a little bit longer. Now this side's going to be a little bit more difficult, and I'm actually going to, this was the color switch, I'm going to cut this back a little bit. On this side, you want to make sure that when you're closing it that you have this, because you're going to want to turn it inside out. So you're going to want to close it, keep that out, because you want to know where the middle is of the other one. And just keep closing it. This side you're not going to be able to do inside out. But you'll still be able to do a nice, neat job. Now the reason I kept these out is so I can see where the middle is there, because when I pull this tight, I actually want to sew it together with the top of the other one. And can sort of feel it there. I just want to make sure the tops are both even. Do another one. There we go. Now in this case, I don't want to have too much of a knot here because you'll see it. By the way, when you're done with that, you can just snip those off. And then you won't see those. They'll get tucked in there. Just squeeze them in. Okay. So that you don't have anything at the top of the hat. If you want to, you could put a pom-pom there. But if you don't, take your thread or your yarn, pull it through just one layer, so it's in between the two layers of the hat, and then pull it like this a few times. And like this. And it'll just, make sure you're not pulling it too tight, it'll just lock that thread into place a little bit. Then when you get down here, simply pull it a little, let go, and then it's stuck in between those two layers. So now you have yourself a little cap that's reversible, one side like this, or turn it inside out. And you have a cap like that. Voila. Got one. Should I do it? Hi, my name's Karen Skazell. Okay,